was YouTube and Snapchat and Vine, there was public access TV. It was a media platform for the rest of us, a way for people with something to say to find an audience. Our next guest launched her own public access show at the age of 16 to talk about life as a New York teen and being, quote, pissed off about a lot of things. Rainbow Ruthie gained a cult following, and now 20 years later, she's revisiting it with a semi-autobiographical series. We've invited her on to talk about the new show and what it was like to be a public access star. Ruthie Morantz, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us about Rainbow Ruthie. Why did you decide to get into public access programming?
Well, I always just tell everyone that I was a huge public access fan, and that's actually the truth. I think I started watching in middle school. I mean, I was an only child. I had both my parents were like public school teachers, had a lot of free time. I watched a lot of television, and I discovered that there was 4 channels in Manhattan that had like the weirdest, most shocking and bizarre and amazing shows that I've ever seen in my life.
What were some of your favorites?
I mean, there was like a satanic live call-in show. There was this guy that barbecued his iguana. There was like, more sort of music video mashups where literally someone, I think his name was called Psycho TV, but he would come in with like a stack of VHS tapes like this high. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself, but it was just me watching this as a 7th and 8th grader being like, this is really rad. Like, I want to do this. And I actually didn't really think about it that much. I just was like, well, I'm doing this. And I asked my dad for a high-8 video camera because that was the medium at the time. And he was like, sure, I'll buy you a camera, but you have to make your show. Like, we are not blowing money on this camera. My dad was not like a big gift giver. So I was like, oh, I'm doing it. And I just applied, and I was so, at that time, I'm not sure if anything has changed, but you just provided your proof of address, and you sent in a description of what you wanted your show to be about, and you had a 28-minute show, either weekly, bi-weekly, you chose, and they gave you your preferred slot. Mine was on Friday nights at 9:30 for 4 years. And
primetime, TGIF.
Right?
You were up against like Boy Meets World.
Yeah. There was no metrics. We don't know who was watching, but
right, we don't know who watched more, which show was more watched.
Right, it was probably Rainbow Ruthie, but I really didn't think about it. I just did it, and part of the reason I loved it was because it was just part of this community that was making really amazing work. And we all sort of knew each other, and we'd all see each other drop off the tapes, or we'd watch each other's shows, or we'd do call-ins. And then, the show sort of just like took off because I was one of the only teenagers on the network that was, making this sort of really documentary style thing of like me hanging out with my friends, or me ranting on my bed about the patriarchy, or me, going to see the Spice Girls movie and bringing the camera, and like whatever was happening I was just sort of making that the show.
Do you remember what you wrote in your description of the show?
I think it was like something about like a teenage girl and her antics, like something about walking around New York City yelling at people. I mean, that was like literally like what I did.
So it was sort of like a slice of life show. Just whatever was happening for you that week is what you would record.
Yeah. So every show started with me sitting on my teenage bed, which you could sort of trace my maturity levels by my wall. Like when I was 13, I think when I first really started the show, there was tons of posters and stuff. And as I got older, it just got, less and less crowded on the wall. And my face changed, my body changed. Everything was like happening on camera. So
what an age to be recording your every moment.
I was presenting who I wanted to be. So I think that was a really good outlet to have in high school. The first few episodes were really incredibly precious to watch because I'm like just a child, like a baby. And we're doing really bad sketch comedy about like Singled Out, which is an old MTV show, and Oasis, and like, I don't know, we're just totally in a way that I could never be now, just completely authentically sort of moving through these, social issues without any filter, like just my goal was always authenticity. So when, my show sort of started picking up steam and these like teen magazines and all these other people started trying to figure out how to monetize me as a teenage girl, like, can you be an MTV VJ? Can you do this? I was just like, no, F that. Like, I love public access. Like, it's for the people. And now I'm like, was that a really good decision to turn all those deals down? I don't know. But, it was very important to me to maintain the integrity that I was the person in control and I was a woman controlling my own image. That was, and I mean, I still feel that way, but it was definitely like that was part of why I never let the show go to another producer.
And how did Rainbow Ruthie end as a public access show?
It just ended because I went to college. Like, that's the only reason it ended. It just was like this natural bookend of life where you graduate high school, and I just was like, well, I'm not going to be on public access forever. I mean, I should probably study how to be a filmmaker because this is like, I guess this is filmmaking. And yeah, I went to school, I went away, like became an adult, and then, 20 years later, I started watching the tapes, and it was just like totally insane.
Tell us about this new project of yours. And you seem to be talking about it, about the idea of performing who you want to be on camera.
Right. Well, yeah, I was sort of, I was finishing my graduate degree at NYU Film School, and I was studying really intensely how to be a writer and director. And I would sort of like mention this public access show I used to have sometimes. People are like, what? You need to write about that. And I was like, I don't know. I don't want to be on camera. I don't want to, look at the tapes really. And a lot of it was really, I had like recently lost my dad, and I knew that like a lot of my life with my dad was on those tapes, because it was a lot of like this idyllic time between my father and I where we were living, I was in high school and we were living together. And, it took a lot of time and therapy to like be like, all right, I'm going to watch the tapes. This is, a part of my life, and maybe it's something people can really connect to. So I started writing a comedy about, being in your mid-30s and being a former public access star and trying to re-enter like the social media landscape with like no followers or no anything, and now having to compete with like the YouTubers and the real influencers, and sort of being like the mother of that genre in a weird way, but having to like reclaim my space. So Spike Lee was my mentor at NYU, and he gave me like a small grant to make the pilot. So that's sort of how the series came about.
You were at such a tender age when you had this public access show. Would you want a younger sister or a young teen friend to do something similar today on social media platforms, or do you think that it's like a different world?
I think it is a different world because everything is monetized. But I feel like there's going to be a resurgence of like counterculture to all of this. I mean, I feel probably everyone feels that way, but public access was that. It was like punk. It was counterculture. It was like completely like something you're not going to find on broadcast, right?
That's really true, that if you were a teen in the 90s and had something to say, it was either public access, photocopying a zine at Kinko's,
right,
or maybe getting like a college radio show.
Yes.
And it was all sort of like DIY, and it lacked polish.
Right.
And now, as you said, Instagram, you sort of control your own image, but like not really.
Not really. Instagram owns that. I mean, really, YouTube was that, at the very beginnings of YouTube, where you could just kind of like look around and see this weird stuff.
Tell us about where we can see this new show.
Well, you can't see it yet, but hopefully it'll be soon. I am probably going to have a couple screenings in New York, but for right now, you can check out my trailer online and my website.
And the pilot just premiered at South by.
The pilot just came back. Yeah, we just came back from South by. That was really fun. Yeah, and hopefully you'll be seeing more of it soon.
Ruthie, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Appreciate your time.